I'm Pops. Let's talk about Average Joe, the biopic from Pure Flix, dealing with Joe Kennedy, the coach that was praying midfield, finds himself in the middle, embroiled in this legal case that goes all the way to the Supreme Court. But we're going to talk about this new film that drops in a week or so. It's going to talk about his past and where he ended up and how it kind of worked itself through, and talk about what this film is like, what you might like, might not, and give you my thoughts right now. All right. Average Joe. That's right. Eric Close plays Joe Kennedy. I knew him from Without a Trace. His wife is Denise, played by Amy Actor, who was on Person of Interest. She was on Angel. And the two of them have this sort of like central talking to the camera, fourth wall breaking moments. And then, of course, they have these acting and these sequences that play out over the course in flashbacks forward, back and forth, back and forth. We'll get to more of that in a moment. So it kicks off pretty much as some of the trailers have kind of portrayed, where they're literally talking to like the camera crew about different sequences.
We ready?
And we see flashbacks from his childhood, the abusive parents, abusive homes, problems in school, different things that cause him all sorts of problems that kind of form his life before he kind of has this major turnaround that takes him into being a Marine. So this film is a lot more biopic than I think people might expect. I think it goes through his life for years and years and years. There's a massive time jump when he and Denise become very estranged. There's like a 10-year gap and they kind of just abruptly jump back into it. I think that's kind of one of the weird elements of the film, is it kind of doesn't quite have a flow and a pacing, and its approach is not consistent. So 1 minute they're talking to the camera, then they're not, then they're going forward in time, and then they're kind of like, forget this, we're not going to explain where like Denise's kids go. Oh wait, they're adults, they moved out. It's like just little things like that I think are a little inconsistent. I pretty much imagine just a Coach Joe story playing out with his wife, from them being children all the way through to their adult life, going into this Supreme Court case. Now, and if you also think this is a lot about the legal case and the hearings and all of that, and actually him praying and getting into all this religious talk and legal talk and mumbo jumbo, it's there and we have it, but it is not in your face. This is not a Jesus movie. There is God and prayer, but there's no real big Jesus thing. There's some conversations about being religious and praying, but not necessarily a run to the altar moment or anything like that. You were seeing some sort of portrayal of his life and with his relationship with Denise. You see the ups and downs that they've had and the decisions that they had to make. At one point, Denise is very, very ill, and it causes a major change for him in his life. And then, of course, later on, because of the situation that's kind of embroiled in around the prayer and the lawsuits, it really dramatically affects Denise, and that kind of creates a wedge between them as well. The strongest thing in the movie really is their dynamic together. I think Amy Acker is really fantastic as Denise. They have a nice chemistry. He has a nice chemistry with the scenes and the football team, and some of those moments I think are fine. Some of the football scenes themselves, I think, are just okay. It never feels as good as some of the mainstream football movies. It doesn't feel like they're really dirty and sweaty enough. It only showcases them winning when, in fact, they actually were not they were kind of a below average team many years. So when it leads into the legal case where Joe is basically not fired, but not rehirable, he's sort of kind of like not renewed to come back, and then he's made ineligible to go to another team in the district. So that prayer element and breaking that rule, we don't want you doing this, we don't want you doing this, it kind of comes to a head, but it was never, I don't think it ever felt really as political or as boisterous as I expected it to be. The movie felt a little less volatile than I kind of even expected it to be. And as I said, there is some church, there is some prayer, but it's more about just their relationship and their dynamic, leaning into why he prays and not being forcing other kids to, and that kind of thing. And you get these random officials, these nameless, faceless people that have issue with it. And it kind of puts Denise, as I said, in the middle of some of those kind of conflicts. And she doesn't really, I'm not sure she's totally on board with Joe most of the movie, but she wants to support her husband. So when that is at odds with one another is when there's even conflict at home. But I think that the thing the film does well is it does create, I think what it happens in real life is these faceless entities that take offense to something that's religious into the world. So it'll be something like a 10 commandments or a nativity scene, or in this case, prayer. It's some faceless person, a freedom from religion organization or someone No single person is really identified. There's a couple of moments that are kind of like very quietly or passively kind of thrown out there. Like these are the people who may have issue with what Joe was doing. There is a scene in the movie where they end up in a cafe and he's having a conversation with someone who is obviously very a-religious, and the person actually quotes Peter to him, and he isn't really even he didn't Joe doesn't come across as being very religious much at all. And he kind of has this big pitch on why he's doing this, and it's about freedom. It's not about my faith. It's not about trying to doctrinate other people. Now, I will say the general society writ large don't ever believe people like Joe. It's always treated as though they're just trying to brainwash kids or people in general. And I think the film is at least trying to break that a little bit to give you an example where that is not the case. So this is one of the sweetest moments. Mrs. Pops and I kind of had a little laugh where they kiss, and then they're talking about this didn't actually happen. That's not how it actually went down. And then of course they cut back, and he's like, "Well, that's how I remember it." So again, they're talking to the camera. It's sort of like this back and forth of how the narrative is actually playing out. And at the end of the day, that's what the film is really more about. It's more about Joe and Denise. It's more about their relationship and journey. And yes, Joe was kind of put in this predicament because I didn't know what to do. He was approached with someone who would help him with legal counsel. The court cases don't go his way, then they do, then they don't. I think all of that was a fine sort of telling of Joe's story. All right, all in all, Average Joe is kind of average. It's just not particularly put together as smoothly as I would have liked. I don't like the talking to the camera abruptly in the middle of scenes, particularly like in the Marine sequences and things like that. They kind of break the tension. The Marine sequence I thought was kind of absurd because obviously they're trying to create more of a PG version of the military. And it was like he's using all these made up words, but it really just felt fake and phony when he's being screamed at by his drill sergeant. I also feel like some of the tension, the actors were good together when they were romantic and sweet together, but when they were forced to fight, it didn't feel nearly as believable. There wasn't you just felt like they didn't dislike each. They weren't really mad at each other. It was really kind of forced and didn't kind of flow as well. And of course, there's really no court drama. There's no real that whole piece of it. A lot of the best stuff kind of happens off camera. So it's kind of a letdown in that regard, but it's not the worst thing in the movie, worst thing in the world for you. And if you're in that field where you want to have Christian films, you want to hear these stories, you like these this is going to be a film for you. I'm kind of middling on this as kind of like 2.5 star for out of 5 for me. Add a star if those things are your cup of tea. I think that all in all, it's nice to see stories like Joe's come to light, hopefully create conversations. There is an abrupt sort of stinger where Willie Robertson from Duck Dynasty just shows up and explains what the court case kind of means for all religions. Hey, it doesn't matter if you're doing 10 Commandments and nativity or a Muslim thing or whatever. It's like, no, they don't have a right to suppress all this. And I was like, that was kind of odd and abrupt. It wasn't bad. It was just kind of like out of nowhere, Willie Robertson's talking to everybody at home. It's like, okay. So that's my take on it. If you guys go see it, let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching. I'm Pops.
Thank you for tuning in. We hope to see you again. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment. Pops, Pops, thanks for the watch with Chris.